Hey there, readers, writers, and friends. Story Serpent here, and today I have a multi-title quick roundup for you, and I'm really excited. But before we get into it, today's random words are like, share, subscribe, quibble. So, I came across a series of books that I don't think warrant quite their own video. Let us start with The Adventures of Nanny Piggins, which is illustrated by channel favorite Dan Santat and is written by R.A. Spratt. Now, here's the thing. This one's British. It comes to us from, let's find us the title page, Little Brown and Company, but was originally published in 2009. This is the first book in a series. There are multiple Nanny Piggins books out there now, and I can see why a lot of people would love them. They are kind of fun and silly, but they're not really middle grade. They're actually what we would usually call a chapter book, meaning that every chapter is kind of a short story in its own right. And while they do sort of follow a chronology, as characters appear, they then continue to appear in later instantiations. They don't really have an overarching narrative. This isn't one big story. This is just, how did Nanny Piggins get there? And then the various adventures that ensue encapsulated. It's definitely meant for a younger audience. I will tell you, it really hates rich people. Like, a lot. Like, there's not a single one of these chapters that you go through that does not have something to say about how terrible rich people are. It's disparaging of culture, but also disparaging of modern culture at the same time, so I guess it's kind of even-handed like that. I don't love that Nanny Piggins isn't real into education and often hides her ignorance rather than admitting she doesn't know things. I don't love that as an example for kids. Pretty sure R.A. Spratt hates men because their father gets put through the ringer. He is frankly the antagonist the whole way through, and setting children up in opposition to their parents isn't something I love. You can also see that our friend, the Russian ballerina dancing bear, despite not wanting to go back to Russia because too cold, has a very specific symbol on his hat, comrade. Do you see it there? Yes. Given how much she hates rich people, I wouldn't be at all surprised to find out that R.A. Spratt is a communist sympathizer. It gets a mostly meh, because that's really it. There's not much else in there that's intersectional, etc. But even if I had like a 6 or 7-year-old who was just learning how to read, there are way better options than Nanny Piggins. Dan Santat does his work though, always. The illustrations are super charming and they have these full page. Let's find us one. Here we go. Come here. We have these lovely full-page illustrations with the little placard with the part of the book that it goes with. And, you know, Dan is always top-notch. So no shade to him, but I'm probably not going to be recommending the Nanny Piggins books to anybody I know. The next one I stumbled across is called Baba Yaga's Assistant, and this one is illustrated by Emily Carroll, written by Marika Mikula. And I was so fortunate as to find a library copy that was colored on. That was a good time. This book is really beautiful. The artist does a wonderful job of encapsulating the mood and the vibe through color. I really appreciated that. If you know anything about Baba Yaga and her various tales, you'll get a kick recognizing, you know, the house on the chicken legs that, you know, likes to be flattered. You're gonna see all of those normal things that you would expect from a Baba Yaga story. But I did feel like it was a little light on story. I felt like it could have been a little bit longer. I also would have liked to see a better resolution between Masha and her family. Masha, our main character, Her father is getting remarried, and as we all know in most of these Russian tales, like, stepmoms don't bode well, but it's actually her new sister who ends up being, like, kind of the worst. She's one of those, like, awful children that bites people. Um, and so how she ends up dealing with that is very clever, but in the end, she just kind of leaves. Like, okay, I guess my dad's happy now, I should just leave him alone. She doesn't really try to reincorporate herself in his life and with his family, even though there is an apology exchanged between them. So I would have liked to see more there. I also would have liked to see a sequel, which there isn't. And it makes me very, very sad. Also, Makula hasn't written. She's written one other graphic novel, which unfortunately I can't recommend to you because it's a gay love story for YA. Um, I went ahead and read it, but even, like, it wasn't super compelling. I didn't love it. And I found the art style to be a little juvenile for who it was being marketed to, quite honestly. So, like, Makula, get back to work. We need a Baba Yaga's assistant #2. I mean, it says it was a New York Times bestseller. Get on it. And then this is more of an update than a new book per se. You all will remember the Book of Tea duology that I did back in the spring of this year by Judy I. Lin, and I knew at the time that she was going to have another book coming out. This one is called The Song of the Six Realms, and I told you guys I probably wouldn't read it. I missed when this came out. I certainly didn't purchase it as a library copy, but this didn't get advertised at all. And I am noticing this pattern, particularly amongst certain publishers. If your first book, your first duology, whatever you're under contract for, only does well because they put you on, say, Barnes & Noble YA book club for a month, or if they do a bunch of Amazon special advertising things. If that's why your book does well, do not expect to get marketing support thereafter. This book got released. Actually, I think it got pushed back a month from its original release date. I might be wrong on that, but I think it got pushed back. And then once it did release, crickets. I didn't get advertised for this, either for Barnes & Noble or Amazon. There was not a whisper of this book, so I would not be at all surprised if it does not do particularly well in terms of sales, because nobody has said anything about it. And not unlike, say, the second book in a duology I recently talked about, I think part of the reason they're not advertising it is because they don't want to take the pushback they're going to get for it. While the main story between it's very Eastern. It's a very Eastern told story. The romance is much more about people's proximity and understanding one another in an intimate way. It's not Western romance where it's about, hand holding and tingles and smooches in the moonlight. You get a little bit of that. I think she may have gotten some feedback about the whole we didn't even get a good kiss at the end of her previous duology, because we definitely get some of that. But their romance, despite being heteronormative, is surrounded by gay relationships. The mythos in this world has a bunch of gay relationships. Her uncle is gay. Good dude, though. Like, no shade. Real good dude. Definitely tries to take care of her as best he can, but, like, her family are shunned because her mom and her dad were killed, but we don't really get a good explanation as to why. Most of the book takes place in kind of this ethereal, celestial realm. But again, it's kind of light on explanations about how and why certain things are going down the way they are. And in the end, it ends up just being patriarchy bad, men who hold on to power bad, anybody trying to assert authority in a hierarchy bad. It's very lame. I can't imagine anyone saying this is their favorite book. And I think that's part of the reason why it went under so many people's radar, is because the publisher knew they just didn't have anything to really grab onto and market successfully. So that's the update on Judy Eilen. She wrote another book, and it's about as meh, maybe even a little more meh than the Book of Tea duology. Anyway, that's all the Serpents got for you today. Till we meet again, read on, write on, stay sharp.